Hi guys, I'm Mama Bear to Many. I am mom to 14 children. 12 of my children still live here at home. I have had this cough that will not go away. This steam coming up here is is a vaporizer filled with mullein. So I'm just trying to like sit here and chill. The kids are in the pool, being supervised, obviously. I wouldn't just let the kids in the pool. Older sister said she wanted to take some of them in the pool, and I said, yeah, sure. So I thought that we would take a couple minutes and talk about different types of philosophies that I have adapted into our homeschool unit. I'm just going to kind of give an overview of different ones, just from my opinion and my standpoint, not like this is technical, this is technical. Okay. So one of the first forms of education that I take is Waldorf. And I'm sorry that the vaporizer is like coming now. The wind decided to blow this way a little bit, but I really need to sit next to this. I'm really hoping. It's like I feel okay during the daytime, but then as soon as I lay down at nighttime, then my cough just starts. I've not had a fever. I've not really had a cold. It's just this weird cough. And I'm not sure if it's like allergies, like just a bunch of stuff from allergies or what it is, but I thought the mullein is not going to hurt. And there's lots of things that I cannot take being pregnant. So I have been homeschooling for 27 years-ish. No, that's not right, because my oldest two went to kindergarten. Actually, they went to kindergarten and first grade, and he's 27. So take away 5, 22 years. So I've been homeschooling for 22 years. All of my children have been homeschooled, and I came from a public school setting. My husband came from a public school setting. We went to different types of schools, different schools. We didn't meet in school. So the philosophies that I love researching about ways that children learn. Years ago, I did this whole study. I probably took like 3 months, and I studied like how children learn reading. And it was really quite interesting that if a child learns reading like too early, when their body's not ready to develop, that their comprehension of that reading cannot actually come to fruition. And a lot of times that's why some of the things taught might not be good, because they struggle with reading comprehension later on, and then they have to kind of revert back to the beginning. So why not just wait till a little bit later and go ahead and do that? Now, I'm not talking about, a college student learning to read. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying you read your child and know what they need at what point in their life. And I think that's why, I think in a way it's why unschooling gets a bad rap. Is one, people think that you're doing nothing because it says unschooling. It's like not schooling, but really it's not schooling the way that the school department is schooling. And the other is that I should like write myself notes, because when I'm doing a bunch of things and I'm like listening to the kids, and I'm also listening to make sure that like, okay, they're okay. I don't need to stop. We're good. That, and then I say and like and that type of stuff a lot, and then I sound like I'm kind of just stupid. Anyway, I'm not a good editor either, so I just kind of throw it out there because that's real life. If you were sitting with me right now, we'd be having this conversation and the same thing would happen. And it's interesting, like when I sit with other moms, that's how it is, that's how you talk, but when you're on a video, you're supposed to like sound professional. It's supposed to be like professionally edited, and it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be a certain way. I'm not that person. I'm just putting information out there. I'm hoping to bless other people with the information that I've learned over the years. Okay, so different styles that I have learned and adapted to our homeschool is the thoughts of forest schooling or nature schooling, and lots of different types of programs go through this. But basically it's talking about spending quality time outside. So your kids are totally engulfed in nature a lot of their younger years. And then that carries on as they get older. Maybe they like to just sit on the porch and do, or in the grass or whatever, doing whatever they're doing, or reading a book. I'll find sometimes my kids outside just reading a book. So it's just getting into nature. It might look like taking nature walks. It might be walking around your neighborhood. It might be going in the backyard. And I think a lot of that's one of the reasons that we moved up here, was so we could have land, not only for animals. And I think there's a blessing and a whole nother side to that side of things. But also the confidence that children can build to go out in the woods. And a lot of people are going to be like, why would you let your kids do that? The kids can go out with saws, hammers, nails. They have built some extraordinary type things out in the woods. Their imagination runs wild. Children need to use their imagination. Even in my generation, I remember our parents would kick us outside and be like, no, you're staying out there. It was after school or whatever. Like, no, you're staying outside. It's good for you. And then, of course, we'd wait for the ice cream man, but, Anyway, so just being able to let your kids run free, run wild, dig holes, get dirty. You guys are going to notice that my children's clothing is dirty a lot of times. You know why? Because they're outside having fun. Now, if we're in public, like when you see us go on adventures places or whatever, then if you notice their clothing, then those, most of the time, unless it's actually we've been dirty at that adventure, most of the time they're wearing like clean type clothing, because we have two separate clothing. So we have clothing for play and we have clothing for going out, and we need to do that because the amount of activity that my kids spend outside. I do not want to say no, you can't do that, because I want them to explore and learn, and that's how young children learn. They learn by experimenting. They learn by dumping water and making mud and, playing with animals and picking bugs and catching butterflies and building things. That's how they learn when they're young. They learn about the people and the world around them and how God created so many beautiful things and how they work in harmony. And then they ask a million zillion questions, right? When they're 3 years old. But why? But why? 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 Yeah. Answer those questions, because they want to learn that information instead of shoving them off. Okay, so I think it's a really interesting philosophy. I know in Waldorf schools, they do not start an education until the age of 7. I think they usually do like a rhythm type program, which is just kind of like a rhythm is just kind of like your day looks kind of the same, so they know what to expect. And I think that that's good in a way overall. I mean, we have so many different like age levels in our house. It can't always look like that, but everyone knows that each meal is going to be at a certain time every day, and they get ready for it. And it's just like, okay, you wake up, you get dressed, you eat your breakfast, and that's like the rhythm of the day of things that are going on. So Waldorf talks about rhythms and that type of stuff with their thing. I don't get all crunchy weird with that. It's just, there we go. I'm working on a baby blanket and I just like unraveled it trying to like put it away. Anyhow, so yeah, I'm going to put this in there. I just have to put my hook in there so that I don't lose any more stitches. So that would be one type of philosophy. Charlotte Mason talks about nature studies. As children get older, a lot of times she believed so much in like being outside and being in nature. It was incredible, and I think there's such a blessing to that. Like I was just saying, sometimes in Charlotte Mason type things, what they would do is they would come back, like if they went on a trip or they were maybe researching like trees, like what the trees look like in spring versus what the trees look like in fall, and they might draw or they might journal or they might do whatever, like surrounding what they're seeing. Like they're observing the world around them and then they're putting it onto paper, whether that's in art form or whether that's in writing form. And some of these other techniques take the same thing on. And honestly, most of the time you don't even have to tell your children to do that, because they just want to do that. Most of my children who are writers have pen pals, and they will go and they will write to their pen pals like everything that they're seeing and doing and experiencing and all that type of stuff. So it's another form of them being able to write, and then they want to like make it beautiful, right? So then they want to learn cursive and they want to do that by themselves. Boys, not so much. They could probably care less about cursive and that type of stuff, and for me, I'm okay with that. I want them to be able to sign their name, which most people cannot sign their name anymore. But I want them to be able to do that. Aside from that, I'm okay if they want to or they don't want to. It's just kind of how things go. If you introduce them to something, a lot of times they will love it and they'll introduce it. And I'm talking a lot about schooling because this is the time of year right now that I start evaluating what we did last year. Because I just sent everything into the school teacher. I got their evaluations back. I'm ready to like re-put my stuff into the school department. And I'm just thinking like clearly about what each child wants to do. I have discussions with my children on what they want to learn and what they want to do. And or I might visually observe things that are going on that might make them like a candidate for a certain thing, right? If I notice that they're really interested in this, then hey, why can't we do this? Another thing is Montessori, and Montessori is, so the difference between Montessori, Waldorf and Montessori are very similar. So Montessori is a lot of like hands-on manipulatives. You might look at like hibiscus. Is that how you say that? I said it, now it sounds like when I heard it, it sounded wrong. Anyway, different forms of like math manipulatives. You might be counting like actual objects. You might be doing just different types of hands-on learning. Puzzles, like that type of stuff for the early years. Let me grab a coffee. So Waldorf and Montessori are very similar in like kind of their philosophies. Both of them tend to like, Waldorf is more like natural wood type stuff, which I think is really beautiful. But I don't think everything has to be natural wood. I'm not like super crunchy, whatever. I just think that's really cool to have like natural wood, using wool, like natural products rather than synthetic products. They can't always afford that. And the skill itself is a good skill to have. So Waldorf might include things like different handicrafts, like knitting and crocheting and weaving and carving, and they also do like all types of handicrafts are very like Waldorf. Other things that they might be into would be like blocks. And this to me kind of goes with like a unit study type theme. Maybe if you're a Waldorf, like you wouldn't agree with this, but they learn things in segments. So say you're looking at learning ancient Egypt, right? The parent might just be like, oh, you know, I was thinking about doing like this craft or this thing around ancient Egypt, and you are, for me, I would take the time to expose my children to ancient Egypt. Now, Waldorf might follow more of a curriculum. For me, I would do more of a exposing my child to the things. So I might like either watch a movie or listen to a podcast, or I might read a story about it and then see where the interest is as far as that goes. And then after I do something like that, I'd probably do some sort of hands-on activity. I want to do Egypt, but I want to do it ancient Egypt, but I want to do it later in the year. I actually just put it on my wish list. I want to get little, like, they're little tombs, and you, like, dig out the mummy. And I think that would be really cool because it's hands-on, and then they're, like, engaged with that and that type of stuff. And from there, after I would do, like, those small things, if none of the kids really had an interest in going further in that, I also would I would go to the library and I'd probably have 20 to 30 different books just on the subject, allowing kids to look at pictures and or ask for those books to be read, and just allowing them to be engaged in stuff, and then them kind of deciding if they want to go further with this or if they don't want to go further with this. It might be something that really interests them, and it might not be something that interests them, and being okay with either of those things. I like to introduce a lot of different things, but I don't really require, like if I read a book, I wouldn't require, hey, we might have an oral discussion about different things, but I wouldn't be like, hey, can you fill out these things, or could you do an essay for this. So in that sense, Waldorf would require the writing and would require all that type of stuff. I don't feel like it has to be that way. My job is kind of like introducing them and then seeing where each child wants to go with it. So Waldorf has blocks, and the blocks are for a certain period of time. So say it was ancient Egypt, they might do it for like 2 weeks, or they might do it for like 6 weeks. So it's usually between 2 and 6 weeks that they would do that. And they would have a couple blocks a day. So they wouldn't do math like every day. They would do math like in blocks like that. They would do different like studies in blocks like that. They might do different handicrafts in blocks like that. So they are getting that skill and getting that knowledge. Getting that knowledge all in them, and then they're moving on to something else. And something actually I've read a lot about different studies, and I've read about lots of studies. Oh my goodness. So I've studied a lot about just different ways children learn. And actually that's a really good form of the way children learn, because what they do is they take in knowledge, and then they need to take a step back to let that knowledge sink in, and then decide if they want more knowledge in that area. So maybe you read a couple books about ancient Egypt, and then kind of like an overview and that type of stuff, right? And I'm just using this as an example. And you do the craft, and they've looked at books individually, and some kids might be like, yeah, I don't want anything. And then some kids might be asking you questions, A, B, C, and D, that you need to actually seek out that other information. And that's what I do. Seek it out with them. We go to the library. We go on the internet. We go and look for videos. We search that information that they want to know for them. And that's what child-led learning is about. Okay, so I take kind of those types of things from Waldorf. I take kind of the hands-on manipulatives from Montessori. I probably would say that I take my reading type philosophy from Charlotte Mason, as well as like nature studies, as nature is important like throughout the years. And I think most of these types of things are saying nature is important throughout the years. But she talks about reading good books to your children, having good books available for your children. I have a couple. I actually found a new one. It's called like revival books, or Read Aloud Revival. I think that's the name of it. If I remember, I'll try to drop a couple links down in the description box below if you want to know about different things. Some people that you might learn from, as far as like Waldorf, might be Pine and I forget. I'll try to drop a bunch of things down in the description box for y'all in case you want to check more out. And please know that I am not hardcore in any of these philosophies. It's just I'm taking tidbits of this to add to my education for my children. Just from researching all different types of education. Does that make sense? So for reading, then I would have good books. So I like to keep good book lists with me. If I am doing, say, a unit study or something like that, or I plan to like engage the children in something. I hate saying unit study because I don't really feel like I do unit studies, because I don't like give these books, we have to read these books and then you have to do these worksheets. It's more like, hey, I want to give you an idea about what this period of time or what this subject is about. So just do that, right? And so I'll have a bunch of good books that we can read. And Charlotte Mason talks about twaddle-free reading. And so twaddle is just a book that doesn't have purpose, right? Like for a parent, they're really difficult to read. For a child, it's kind of like reading in a way that they're not learning anything. They're not learning vocabulary. They're not learning whatever. They're not learning they're not learning a darn thing. It's things like, Princess Diary, or not Princess Diary, little princess books, right? Or, I don't know, I'm trying to think, Captain Underpants, okay? Like, that would be twaddle reading. It's not giving information. So it's okay. And I'm okay with twaddle reading if they are just learning to read. For instance, if my children are just learning to read and they pick up a step 1 or a step 2 easy reader from the library, I'm fine with it. It's like, okay, whatever. But because we read such good books, most of the time, if they get older and they pick up a book that's not, that's full of twaddle, they'll start to read it and then they'll be like, I don't really like that book. And I don't have any thing. They don't have to read the whole book if they start reading it and they're like, yeah, I don't like this at all, if they picked it up from the library, right? And so it's just allowing those things. Okay. I also feel like it's one reason that I am not a super minimalist, because I like the idea of minimalism as far as keeping enough stuff in your home that's good. Like, we're kind of minimalists with our clothes. We don't have a ton of clothes. We don't have a ton of books. I do actually have a ton of books. I have some that are going to the yard sale. But more about rotation of books, rotation of toys. I don't have a ton right here, right now, because I want brain space to be allowed to be doing instead of cluttered with the stuff around. That said, I do like lots of things to keep on hand for unschooling, for homeschooling, things like good books. And that could be I always have a stack of library books at the house. Some that I picked, plenty that they picked, but a stack of library books always rotating through. I like to keep good games at the house, and some of those are Professor Noggin has a really good series of just different questions, and they quiz each other. Just lots of games. There's tons of games that are actually really educational, and you might not think of them to be educational, like Monopoly. Do you think that's educational? Not really, but it is for somebody who's learning to add and subtract math. Yeah, it is educational. And add and subtract money. Yes, it most definitely is. I'm not saying that we sit around playing games all day. I'm just saying it can be used as part of an educational experience. Yahtzee, little kids learn how to count on the dice or whatever. They learn how to do that. They learn how to count cards. They learn all those things early because it's fun, right? It's a fun way to learn. If I was to learn to count to 5, would I rather count 5 cookies, or would I rather count whatever on a worksheet? I don't know. So they just naturally learn in that manner. Trying to think. So in editing this video, I realized that I didn't complete everything that I keep a lot of. And so I thought that I would just pop this right in the center here. So other things that I keep a lot of is I keep a lot of art supplies so that my kids can watercolor. They can including older children. So I'll have everything from crayons to charcoals to sketch pads, all the stuff for art supplies. We keep a lot of art supplies for the children. Acrylics, watercolors. Somebody actually years ago blessed us with a huge tote of professional grade acrylics and watercolors, and it has been wonderful because they like to make homemade cards and stuff. Even in the older grades, they will YouTube videos on how to do whatever, and then they will just do it. So we keep a lot of art supplies, literally one of those silver cabinets. I don't know if you've seen them in my house or whatever. One of them is all just art supplies. And then the other half of the other one is adult art supplies, and then other reference books for other things. I have an encyclopedia that was it's actually 3 encyclopedias for birds. So that's another thing I keep, is good quality things that they can look at. So like I have a series of books from Rod and Staff, and it is called Birds. And so in the book, it would give a description, a full description of the type of bird. So when they see birds outside, they'll come in and they'll like research that. I also have something similar, not as good quality, but just little like field guides as far as like herbs and plants and animals and trees of North America, medicinal edible plants. I have a book of mushrooms, those types of reference types books that they can, if they see something, then they can come in and just like reference those things. And a lot of times in order to decide what I actually want to get is I would interlibrary loan some of those things, and then I would decide, hey, these are the ones that I actually want. So we have a lot of those types of things for the children. Just yeah, I know a lot of people, they like don't let their kids play Play-Doh, but like that's the type of stuff that I keep a lot of because I think that it's really important. Also, different sewing supplies, like crafty type things like that. So we have yarns and knitting needles and crochet hooks and a spinning wheel, and I really want to get a potter's wheel. Quite a few kids have expressed that. I put that actually on my wish list. Also some kits. Sometimes I'll buy kits to go along with unit studies, and we'll do some of those. Different like puzzle or activities that like I have, like the human heart, that you would like take all the pieces apart and then you could put all the pieces back so you can see like each piece of the heart as you like are putting it on. So those are things that like I keep quite a bit of. So in a sense of, if you look at like a minimalistic type home, they wouldn't have those things. They might have like a drawer with crayons and paper, but those types of things I think are really important. We have lots of like scraps of fabric that the kids can play around with. And then they learn to like build and create with all those things. Scraps of wood outside that the kids can build different things with. You'll probably see scrap piles all over my yard. Yeah, the kids are also working on different things. Some of the kids that are older, and they might have like an old engine sitting there, and they will be like taking apart the pieces of engine just to see how all the components work. Or maybe they want to try to build something from other pieces or scraps of metal that some of them want to learn to weld. We have a small welder, all those types of things. So sometimes like creativity can look like mess, but it's really creativity. And I wouldn't change that. I really wouldn't. Years ago, I thought that I could get away and just be minimalist and deal with that. And I think if I needed to, then I could. But I also like the experience that it gives my children to be able to have all the supplies right there to be able to like create. So yeah, keeping good books. I also like to engage my children when we're riding somewhere, usually in either a podcast or in an audiobook. And that will like engage their mind into something so they're not fighting with their brothers and sisters. Ha ha ha. But yeah, it really does engage them into something. And they'll talk about the books and stuff later that they learned. And hey, that's a period of time. If I have to drive 2 hours to the city, you could read like half a chapter book in that period of time, you know, like rather than waste that time, being like a good steward of your time and doing that. So yeah, I like to take those types of things. I'm trying to think other forms of like labeled education that I might do. I like singing songs. I'm a horrible singer. But I like things that will teach like a lesson in singing. So maybe like when they're younger, doing like just different stories, like like with the finger puppets, like Five Little Ducks, you know, doing those things because it engages a child and it gets them to understand like how to story tell. I also like Waldorf does. Okay, so Montessori and Waldorf, one of the big differences is Montessori does not believe in pretend play, where Waldorf is mainly pretend play. I'm in the middle. I think that kids have vivid imaginations for a reason. God gave them to them. And I have absolutely no issue of my children pretending they are whoever they are. We have dress up clothes and they can pretend they're a frog or whatever they want to do. Like, they can pretend, you know, a lot of times somebody will be a horse and this is my horse baby and whatever. So I try to give like those tools as far as different toys or props or whatever. And a lot of times they don't even need real props. I mean, how many times do they take the broom in order to like make a toy out of it? So that would also be other things that are used. So I would, and Montessori is very hands-on as far as like kitchen work. I think Waldorf is as well. Excuse me. As far as like hands-on in the kitchen, working together, that type of stuff. So both of those would teach those type of techniques, and also allowing children to use maybe equipment that you may think from like modern American society is not okay to use. For instance, using a knife at an early age. If you teach the child to use that knife, if we think of like in the olden days, they just did that, right? Like in the olden days, there wasn't somebody to say, oh, you know, you're not 10 yet, you can't use that knife. No, they needed hands in order to make it work. And so everyone just worked together. They didn't think, oh, that's not correct. They're just like, oh, I'm going to teach you the correct way to do this. And most likely your children are not going to cut themselves on a knife when they're cutting their finger. They're going to cut themselves on the weirdest thing, or they're going to, you know, they're not going to break a bone from climbing a tree. They're probably going to break a bone from doing something really weird. You know, my daughter broke her toe, like really broke her toe about a month ago. And how did she do that? Now she is like wild up trees and whatever, like out in the woods. And how does she break her toe? She breaks her toe from stubbing it on the wood thing or whatever outside. Stubbing her toe, you know? I mean, we can be cautious as parents, but we also have to let them live and be who they want to be. I personally have this like worst fear of fishing. And as you will see in other videos this week, I've been fishing with my children, and I've done this for years. I have this fear that the hook is going to get stuck somewhere, and I'm going to have to be the one to push the hook all the way through and have to deal with that. And I don't want to be that person. I really do not. So, but sometimes as a parent, you have to just let go of your fear and let it go. So I think that's just like incorporating everything. I have a video coming out, or came out. I think it came out already, that talks about like curriculum. Yes, we use curriculum. Yes, we use science kits. Yes, we use all the things. If you notice this, I'm starting to write like some kind of overview plans. Like this time of year, I write things like just general, as far as, hey, I'd like to do these field trips this year, or this museum might be a cool place to go, or whatever. Like, I'd like to do these things this year or within a year or whatever. I also might write down some topics that I might want to cover. And a lot of that has to do with, or is around, like other things that might be going on. So like right now we're going to do, I think we're going to do like a seashore type thing. I have a list of books. I think in a couple days I'm going to the big library, and I should be able to get a bunch of stuff at the big library, and then we can go to the seashore itself. And we also know there's a museum that has like a touch tank in it, so I think we'll probably go and do that, and we'll make that kind of into like a unit. And I'm sure kids are probably going to come up with some other things that they want to do and see. There's also another place that I'd love to get to by the end of summer. It's like caves. It's free. It's not too far from us. I think it's like 2 hours. It's like caves that have been kind of like sculpted out of the ocean, because the ocean comes in and out, and there's like caves that you can go in at low tide, that it's been sculpted out, and I think that would be really cool. Also, let's just chat real quick. If you see an interest in a child, let's see. So I showed you on the curriculum thing that my one daughter, she was really interested in the social studies type program. So I got her that one first. There was a couple other things that she was really interested in as well, and I will get those for her as well. I want her to be like engulfed in that a little bit before she takes something else on. I find that that works best with most of my children. Not all of my children. I had one daughter who did very good like separating the subjects out, but I find that like for most of my children, it's a block of this, a block of this. So it might be a time period where she does a lot of that really quick, and then if I get something else, then she might work on that for a little bit, and then she might go back to the other thing. Just how it seems to work. That's how, it's like the ebb and flow of everything. So that said, I have a son who's interested in like how everything works. He wants to ask all the questions and do all the things, and I was like, I need a good physics program. And so I asked around and whatever, and I'm getting that for him so that he can have a good physics program, taught in a way that he would do good. He would not do good with like a big book just reading it through like my daughter would. So the one that I'm going to get is like a DVD type curriculum and then hands-on activity, along with like a workbook type thing. And we'll just see how that goes. And probably what we'll do is we'll probably do that like out loud as a family, and then see who else takes interest in it. And that's just like introducing something, right? So I don't know. If you have any questions on school questions or whatever, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And I hope you all have a blessed day.